Well, good evening once again, viewers. It's again the Enterprise Uganda Business Forum or engagement. And on these forums, we are looking at the practical solutions, business solutions within the COVID-19 pandemic period, if you like, or era. And then we're also looking at the post-COVID-19 era. So we are taking the practical way, trying to look for what businesses can do to actually weather the storm within, these challenging times. And as usual, today we have people who are in, the thick and thin of things in the business world, people who are tested, who have actually been, practicing business for quite some time. Please join with me in welcoming Mr. Aga Sekarala Jr., Executive Director, Uganda. Aga, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Very good. Again, we have Patricia Biarugaba from Nina Interiors, Managing Director. You're most welcome, Patricia.
Thank you.
Very good. And again, as usual, we have Mr. Charles Ochichi, the Executive Director, Enterprise Uganda, a business coach who has mentored quite a number of entrepreneurs, in the world of business. Charles, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and happy to be in this afternoon's show again.
Very good. Now, viewers, we're going to be looking at a number of issues that really you as a business person, you could be contending with at this particular moment in time. Of course, borrowing a lot from the experiences of these seasoned business people and coach in the studio. But for starters, let's take a recap of what really transpired last week. Remember, last week we had another group of business people. We had the chairperson of Kasita, who is also a business person. And we also had, that is Mr. Evaristo Kayondo. We also had Barbara Ofono, the proprietor of Victoria Schools. And we learned a lot from them. I think we're going to start from there, Charles. Just a recap, a digest of what transpired last time before we delve into the discussion for this day. What did you pick out of those discussions we had last week?
There were quite a number of interesting lessons that came out of the story of Barbara Fono and the story of Kasita, as well as Kayondo's own personal business journey. But because of time, I'm just going to pick two key learnings from Barbara Fono's story, and then about two key learnings from the Kasita team. From Barbara Fono's story, we could see that there is power in sharing authentic information when you're in a crisis. And authentic information is information which is current and as accurate as possible. If you can bring out the currency and the accuracy of the information and throw it to the key stakeholders, and who are these key stakeholders? We're talking of your customers, in this case it was parents and students. We're talking of suppliers, your own employees. You're talking of your own bankers. If you can share the information that you currently have, not just you being the dominant provider of information, but also the person receiving information from these other stakeholders, that platform will bring a lot of harmony, a lot of unity, and it is what you need under circumstances of COVID and such challenging times. So that story came out very, very clearly from the story of Barbara's journey. But also there was something that came when the Q&A session came up, and a parent asked Barbara, that Barbara, when we closed the term, we had 1 more month to go, and we feel that the value of that money was not got. And she gave a very, very rich response that I want every listener to take home. She said, wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever the circumstances, seek to be of value to your customer. And she went ahead and explained that and said, when times permit and we're able to re-engage with our students, our learners, we will make sure that the lost 1 month will be covered and covered fully, without anybody having to push the owner of the school to achieve that. And that is extremely important, because the last person you want to cheat is the person who actually has the power to keep you in business or to remove you from business, and that's the customer. So no matter the circumstances, be of value. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, even when nobody is checking and looking at you, just do it right. That is the kind of wisdom you need and need permanently whenever you are doing anything as an employee, as a business person, as a church owner, or even as a philanthropic leader, or even head of state, or a public politician. When it came to Kasita, interesting stories came out of there. One was that resources are not the limitation when you are dealing with hardware, retail, and trading operations. They get money. But when they get these monies, the challenge you are having is how do we take advantage of these profits that keep on coming? I've been occupying a 2 by 2 meter shop for the last 15 years. But the profits that I've been getting, I've received them. Where do I take those resources? If these people are not guided on how to deploy those resources, they all crowd in the common destiny. And one of those that came from Kayondo's own sharing was that many of them have tended to go to these huge arcades, the malls. Ground floor is occupied, first floor a bit occupied, second, third, fourth, they are empty. But those are resources, idle. And then because now they have these land titles, the second landing came in. Because they have these land titles and they are visible to the banking industry, the banker says, you know what, I can make you get another cage so that you are better than so and so. So they go in and get more loans. And what happens as they get more loans? They actually affect their cash cows, the very trading operations that gave them the money. So many of them who are even market leaders, some of them were market leaders in electricals, some of them were market leaders in hardware businesses. They have had a challenging time to remain in that space.
Actually, that was a very good learning, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to move on, coming to today's discussion. Aga, you sit in a very important sector, the agriculture sector. In fact, I was looking at the numbers, and it is showing that, you know, during the COVID time, the lockdown, so to speak, because we are still under COVID anyway. 3 sectors that are critical for this economy, that is agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Of the 3, it's only agriculture that expanded. Services and manufacturing shrunk. We want to pick your experience. What or how did you, or do you view, the performance of the agriculture sector from where you sit, away from the numbers we are reading?
Okay, I mean, thank you. It's a good question. I think the issues are several. I think if you think about agriculture on its own, the crops and the animals continue. If you have planted beans or a garden of beans or a garden of maize, you can't switch it off and say, well, COVID has come now, I don't want that maize to come through. However, I sit in the middle whereby we're doing agro-processing. So what is agriculturally grown, for instance, maize, is converted into animal feeds, or if it's an animal, it's converted into protein. And that is also partly manufacturing and partly agriculture. The issues have remained the same for that sector as other sectors. That there have been demand shocks, there have been supply shocks. Supply shocks could have resulted into oversupply. For instance, you saw many stories. You saw many stories of eggs, and there were eggs on pickups. They were everywhere, and farmers had to go out to hawk these eggs that formerly were picked up by Kenyan trucks. They would come in, buy the eggs, and take them to Kenya for export. 60% of the egg production in Uganda is actually going to export.
Interesting.
Currently, that market has dried up. So there was a surplus. There is a glut of eggs, for instance. And this goes across into beef, into milk, into a lot of other sectors, some of which where the producers are not able to spend a lot of time to show the amount of wastage, the amount of milk that they spilled, the amount of meat and protein that was poured down the drain. But it has happened. It has happened, and these sectors have had to take a bit of a long-term view and readjust and say, okay, what do we do? We're still around. People need to consume. Supply the market that's there. But the market we had been used to, or the market that we had target, was a regional market, a big market, which we can't support right now. We can't get to it. So you have an inability to get to your consumer. But then also remember, your consumer, some of them have not been working for 2 months. So some of my consumers work in an arcade, for instance. The arcade is shut down. They're not going to buy chicken. They might not buy a tray of eggs. These are all deprived. These are all constricted consumers. They are not
chicken becomes luxury.
Chicken is a luxury, so it's much easier and much more convenient to buy maybe beans.
I hear you. That's a good one. Patricia, you see, AGA sits in a sector that is close to the basics of life. It's food. You are in a sector which I would call, we have a new word now, essential. Non-essential, not in the sense of essential, but given what we are going through at this particular moment, furniture probably becomes, brought down the list of things that someone might want to look at this particular moment in time. Give us your experience. For starters, how has this affected your operations, and how are you weathering the storm?
Thank you, Charles. You've described our industry as non-essential, but even though we are described as non-essential, the important thing is that we're still relevant to our market. This period has been tough for us, especially the lockdown, because it meant that we were not earning. We were not operating to full capacity. Our consumers are not working, they're not earning, so they can't spend.
Yeah.
And it has really been hard for us because our cash flows were practically depleted. At the time of the lockdown, we had already placed orders, so we had containers coming in, taxes needed to be paid. They were depending on cash flows, they were depending on sales, which didn't happen. So that for us was a really tight period for us, really, really tight. And then of course the logistics of getting things into Uganda. We know that people were working on half capacity at Mombasa. So the bureaucracies there, it was very difficult to get things processed through Mombasa. And then now, even after the lockdown, we have the mandatory testing. So truck drivers don't want to come to Uganda. So getting a truck with your goods to Uganda is almost impossible. And even when you do get a truck, they're going to spend like 3 to 4 days because of they have to wait for their results. So those are challenges that we face. But I think one challenge that we faced that was difficult, especially for me personally, was that you had people sitting at home. They depended on an enterprise that was from which they earn an income. But this enterprise is not earning because it's not open, it's not selling. But they're sitting at home expecting an income. What do you do? It was 2 months, almost 3 months, that we had to pay salaries without earning. So you're paying rent, you're paying salaries, and yet you're not earning. It's been a tough period.
I hear you. Charles, I'll come to you. You cancel enterprises.
Yeah.
I mean, you're faced with this kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. On one part, like Aga said, you have, actually the rains have been on our side this a bit of last year. Actually, most of last year and early this year. So there was a lot of good performance at the farm level. But it goes beyond that. You have this crisis disrupting the entire value chain. With Patricia, I mean, you've seen from where she sits at this particular moment in time. Hard and tough times, and I'm sure there are many Ugandans out there who are in the same spot. What would be the best way forward from where you sit as a business counselor?
Very good. The first thing that comes from the two stories is that one, your market that you used to know has changed. And it has changed both in terms of volume and in terms of purchasing power. And that change is not going to be just for this period or for the next 2 months. It could even be for 6 months, it could even be for a year, before those original volumes and original purchasing powers are restored. Now that appreciation is extremely key, extremely, extremely key. because now you who has been having a certain type of product, either you reconfigure that product to now look at this scenario that has got reduced volumes or reduced aspects in terms of quality. And the buyer is actually also reasonable. So you don't need to necessarily say that I still need to have brought this kind of quality of a particular solution because it used to have a customer. Some of those now you are going to be pragmatic and just say that until I get a customer who wants this kind of a set of chairs and it deposits 70%, I don't need to keep this in my stocks. It's real adjustment. But then the other aspect is that core element of what makes people come out of a crisis is, and good enough, you can see how the Ugandan entrepreneurs are responding. Patricia is saying she feels distressed that she knows an employee called Mary, an employee called Emmanuel, who has a family who has got rent to pay. And she's saying, I've tried for 1 month, I've tried for second month. But they also know that really this money is coming from sales. So again, here is a story of borrowing what we learned from Victoria's schools, conversation with all the key stakeholders, and telling them, you are now part of the story, you are part of the family. What options can we now live with as we go through this game? But the message is very clear, it is tough, adjustments are real and must be.
And it's no longer business as usual.
No, not at all.
Good. Aga, I come back to you. Again, you know, Uganda, like you rightly put it, we cannot, it appears, see or optimize our potential in the agriculture sector without the regional market. And regional market, I think one of the biggest markets for a number of Ugandan goods is the Kenyan market.
Correct.
Tell us, what has been your experience in, you know, trying to approach and doing business across the border? Because, you know, I've seen it from government, especially now in this crisis. Agriculture is being fronted as a silver bullet to actually deal with the economic problems of Uganda. It's like the low-hanging fruit which we can utilize. But give us your real experience as a businessman, you know, trying to do business across the border. Sometimes we focus on the production side and we forget the market and how you reach the market.
The Kenyan market, the Tanzanian market too, all of these markets, some of them have larger populations than Uganda. Most of these markets also, even the Congolese market will have, they will have maybe some very strong and big urban centers within them. In Congo, you have places like Lubumbashi, Kinshasa, which are very big cities with 9-8 million people. So these are big markets. However, those are much bigger than we have currently in Uganda. However, you need to understand that these markets could be cost sensitive, that they are looking at us producing at a lower cost. So we have to take advantage of the things that we produce at a good cost. For instance, products that are byproducts of maize, or byproducts of maybe oil seeds, for instance, soya, for instance, sunflower. It is these products that we might be able to produce in some combination, add some value, and sell into their markets. And the protein has been one of the big ones. Milk, chicken meat, and eggs has been one of the ones that are close to me, that I understand a little bit. And we found a bit of success, I think, in Kenya. There has been quite a bit of a lift that comes from a combination of investors that come from that market, coming into this market, who understand where the production is cheaper, but also have the contacts, they know the lay of the land on the other side. And this is certainly is a driver, and something that is not something that is built in a day. It is something that takes a number of building blocks to be in place to be able to satisfy and produce for these markets.
I hear you. How is market access? Are you finding it easy to do business across the border?
Well, it depends on the time. I mean, all of these markets will, in times where there is reduced demand, will become protectionist. They will try to hold on to their own local producers. All these markets have some aspect of local production, and you have to understand that at a time when there is reduced demand, for instance, in Kenya, they are deprived of their annual 2 million or so tourists per year. And once they don't have these tourists, that's a very big market. 2 million people with very high incomes coming into your market for 2 weeks are big spenders. And you know, they consume chicken, they consume milk, they consume fruits, they consume so many things. And so is Uganda, in the same exact vein. We've got, we were around the million mark, a little bit over the million mark, and to get to a point where we're at zero and you don't have business tourists, you don't have conferences, you don't have events, you don't have weddings, you know, all of that is now down to zero, no workshops. You know that you're dealing with a very unusual situation.
It hits you hard. And I think, Charles, this is a very important point he's raising, because probably we might pose a question whether, given the crisis that the East African economies are dealing with, are we likely to see states retreating to being protectionist? Because they've lost their biggest cash cow. But before you come in, I'd like to pick Patricia's experience, you know, doing business within the East African region, because we're talking East African Common Market.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've been focused on Uganda. We did have a branch in Rwanda, but we had to close down. It became very difficult to do business because of the politics surrounding. As Ugandans, it was difficult to do business in Rwanda. We persevered for a while, and we had established ourselves pretty well until we decided it's best to pull out. So, whereas we are looking at nations becoming protectionist, we also have to look at the political side of it. When the politics between the two countries is not good, it affects the people doing business.
Charles, regional business is a very, very critical.
Listening to the two stories again, you can see the kind of lessons we pick here. One constant is that the entrepreneur always makes the last call. By the time Nina Interior was assessing the situation and saying what are my options and everything else, if they had relied on a particular external whatever force, it could take forever. But an entrepreneur must be ready to make that call. When is it, do you think, enough is enough and I let it go? And that's the game of an entrepreneur. And that's the kind of a skill that's not something you can pick from a textbook. And it's not as easy as just saying, I'm out of Kigali. You debate it, you dream over it, you struggle with it, and then you're saying, I have my manager, they're doing well.
And it's a
I
tough
have my
balance.
customers, they love me.
Yes.
But
Sorry for the interjection, Charles. It's a tough balance, because on one side, we're telling them that patience pays.
Yes.
But then
there
comes a time when you have to say enough is enough.
Enough is enough. That is the tough game of an entrepreneur. And I wish we as a country can appreciate that the brands that we admire, the Nina Interiors, the Yuga Chicks, and others that we admire, the people behind that brand, the kind of energy and effort they apply to keep it on the market, we should be celebrating them much more. But I also want to make some more comment about what Yuga Chick has gone through, the protectionist outlook of the market that we have been exporting to. Uganda has been talking about import substitution. That word is not a prerogative of Uganda. Kenya is speaking the same. They also say import substitution. And who are they substituting? Is the imports from the neighboring countries. Now, if they do that, the good thing that Aga said was that the populations have not gone away. The populations will still need solutions. As they work on their import substitution policies, you as an entrepreneur, you work on the three things that determine the triangle of satisfaction and competitiveness, which is your cost base, your pricing, your quality, and all these three, when you concentrate on one, it's sometimes at the cost of the other. But when you bring in innovation, you begin to make sure that you can benefit from a low cost base, reasonable quality, reasonable price, and still get into that market. And that is something that we need to be cultivating and supporting our entrepreneurs on. We have not concentrated on talking on how to make our people compete better across the borders. We just feel, let them export, let them export. But they export into a country which is doing import is substitution. Not easy.
That's a good one. Aga, I'll come back to you again. Of course, we live in a season where sales are low, like the way to put it at the beginning of this discussion, this interface. And yet you have to stay in business. How have you been able to, balance the two? Of course, low sales coming in, and you still have a business to run, which you want to see sustained for the future. How have you managed to do that balance?
It's been, I think it's been a big challenge. You end up having to run almost a dual personality. You have to think about the long term of the business, which you always have to bear in mind, that there is a long-term picture in the business, but you have to think about some short-term survival techniques. So you have to think about it that you are, it's almost wartime. You're in the middle of a short period where things are difficult around you. Some of the things that we would look at would be cost freezes on certain items. There's certain things that you need to do, that you need to just decide that we will hold on and we'll maybe come back to those in the new year. If you're doing a small expansion somewhere, you're doing something that you had planned for that would take you into the new year, you need to figure out, do I put a hold on to some of these activities? Sometimes you have to make tough decisions. You might have to make tough decisions around something like CSR activities. You might have to decide, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can't do in that environment? So it's a rationalization, and yet you still have to remember that you still have a team. You need to protect them. They need to remain safe. They need to have all the basics to continue to work, and the wheel needs to continue turning a little bit slower, but you need to continue working with what you have. So it's a lot around resource rationalization. I think that tends to be critical.
I hear you. Patricia, I'm sure your experience is not different as well. How have you managed, to create that? Because I know there are a number of business people out there who are watching you and are saying, how have these guys made it? Because, I'm sure this is not the first crisis you're contending with. It could be the first of its magnitude, but you've managed. So how are you handling?
Well, like I said before, there really was no money coming in. Yeah. But their fixed costs we had to pay. We've been discussing in different forums about the landlord and tenants issue. We are tenants in certain areas, and that bill has to be paid. Then I also already mentioned the HR situation. You have 87 people waiting for an income. Those are 87 plus families waiting for an income. So there's no money coming in, but costs were building and had to be met, had to be paid. And we had to make tough decisions and decide very early in the game that we're canceling this contract. We're going to write to this entity and ask them to suspend their services to us. Very quickly, we sat down as a team and made a list of those things, those expenses that could be suspended, and we suspended them. And then, of course, we're now in June, heading towards the end of the year. There are things you have to look at and say that even though we are not earning as expected, we still need to do this, otherwise we get left behind in the game. So, like he said, it's about rationalization, balancing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Charles, when you build a business and it stays for quite some time, it's a citizen of its own in a community. And it has responsibilities to a community where it sits and to people it employs and affects. You're faced with such a situation. what would be your best counsel going forward to complement the input given by, you know, the business operators here?
I think the two panelists have really illustrated the kind of a business mindset that people go through under these kind of circumstances. And the listeners need to know that these are not things that you go through all the time. They come and they have a certain magnitude. There is a story of a similar reaction in the European, UK's market. A certain man called Richard Branson, a very well-respected business entrepreneur. He had a branch, a subsidiary operating in Australia. He made a decision very early and put it under liquidation. Now, many people would have said, oh my God, that is too cruel. He was saying, I'm saving many other parties who were hanging on to that value chain. There were people who were suppliers. There were people who were doing consultancies with that particular arm of the Virgin Group. And he said, if I do not cut this as early as possible, I'm going to deepen the bleeding and the pain of many other people. The earlier sometimes you shoulder this case, the better. But also you could see what our colleagues have been saying. You know, in medicine, they have an emergency room with oxygen for ventilation. When you want to do the bigger thing, first do the giving of oxygen to make you pass through this lean period when you are gasping for oxygen. When you are gasping for oxygen, there's no luxury of trying to do a leg surgery. Sort out this one first. Once that one has been stabilized, then you can now say, let's go to the leg. And then after that, get the patient back moving. So this is rational. This is realistic. Yep. And as we look at the options of our private sector, let's talk to them. Let's listen to them. These people are walking a game that is totally, you don't have a book you go and read and just say, you go and read John chapter 3 verse 16. It will guide you. No. You live with the decisions, you live with the uncertainty, and you live with the consequences.
Good. Aga, I'll come back to you. And dear viewers, we're looking at you know, the issues around business operations, especially around this period. But of course, the principles we're discussing can actually apply beyond COVID-19. We're trying to look at the practical way of how a business can actually survive this crisis by picking the experiences of people that are actually sitting within this crisis and are operating businesses. Aga, moving on to another topic, you run a family business. And in Uganda, of course, we've been globally appreciated as being one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. But again, in the same breath, I think Charles has always mentioned this, quoting some reports of how the mortality rates of business in Uganda is extremely high. You will be lucky to find a business that has lasted 5 years. Share with us your experience. I mean, the business you run, the proprietor, your father still exists, is still around. How have you managed, you know, to carry on and be effective and do what you do in the presence of the founder of the business?
Thank you. The question is always good. It's a question asked quite a bit. The founder of the business is around. I think one of the things that are important is that the founder has established a set of, we'd call them guidelines, and now it's very popular to use the word operating procedures, SOPs are much more popular at the moment. Yes. But they're sort of guidelines, the guiding principles. What does the business do? What does the business stand for? How does it operate? Who does it deal with? I am fortunate. I have been involved in the business from the start of the business, from inception of the business, that I am particularly involved in. And I find that once you know the guiding principles of the business, it is easier to carry forward. The founder is present, so the founder provides fundamental guidance. The founder is a bouncing board all the time, but there has to be a vision for the business going forward. You have to be looking for a place for the business in the market. You have to understand that the market is also not waiting for you. It is not stagnant. New players are coming into the market. People want to compete for a piece of that same market, and this is a growing market. So it's a function of relationship. It's a function of understanding the business. It's a function of an education and a network and a building, adding to building blocks that have already been established.
It's a good one, because sometimes these networks, you know, someone might think it's good actually, because someone said your network is your net worth. That is good, you know, when you find a business already built, you know, it helps because you find networks that are already built. But sometimes this getting the buy-in from the networks is also another thing. But we'll come back to that. Patricia, I'm sure your experience is not different from ours as well in that particular respect. And this is very important because we have so many of our viewers who have begun businesses, pass them on, you know, to junior, and then the business just goes. What is your experience? How have you managed to hold fort?
Well, my experience is not different from Aga's. I joined my mother very early in age. I think I was about 16. Officially, I joined at 16, but I had done earlier tasks as young as 9. I used to measure sugar in the shop, and we used to sell Vaseline in quarter kilo. My job was to measure those things. I was doing that after school when I was in P4. So I entered the business very early, and I've worked with my mother not in competition but as a team. So when the question that you posed to Aga, that how does he feel working in the shadow of his father, I don't feel like I'm working in her shadow. She has set a standard for me to follow. She has set a legacy for me to uphold, and I work differently, but I endeavor to uphold her legacy. And because I see it as a team effort, it's something we did together as a family. My mother, my sisters, my brother, we're in this together. So there are no intricacies or infighting, or I have to do it this way or that way. We're all going, it's the same vision. We're all going in the same direction.
Absolutely. That's nice. Charles.
Yes.
Family business. This is where you come in. What do you say from the learnings, from the experiences of these entrepreneurs in regard to that?
I want first to say the listeners must take this kind of lessons extremely seriously. Extremely few businesses have survived a generational change. After business have become #1 in the market, the family founded the enterprise, but the family, if you checked in detail and did a post-mortem, it is the family that killed it. That's painful. Now, from the submissions of these two individuals who are now entering as the next generation, a few elements are some of the things that you must never ignore if the family enterprise must continue and serve the market as the founders did. #1, you must realize that whatever you are doing as a family business owner, there are two things that you must make sure are not affected, whether your children come on board or they don't. The relevance of your solutions, it came out from the submissions. #2, you must be able to compete. The market is so open and so free that nobody will say, oh, sorry, this is for family so and so. Let's allow them to be in this space. So you must have that clarity as you get your family enterprise built. And then Sekalala brought out the issue of enduring elements that build a sustainable enterprise. Values, mission, objectives, policies. Past those, and Patricia said, that is the legacy Mami has been talking about. And Mami is simply saying, assist me, let's uphold this. But still again on Patricia's experience, there's that thing that we tend to say, this is my business and I'm doing it for the sake of my children. And what you call for the sake of my children is the children, in your view, should not go through the tough times that you did go through. And because of that, they should not be seen at primary 4 to be going to measure sugar. It's like punishing a child. I suffered a lot when I was growing up. I do not want my Patricia to go through the same. Alice Karugaba, the mother of Patricia Chaze, is a lady who simply says, this thing can be done. At 9 years, you can measure sugar. At 16, I'm going to give you a dedicated, direct responsibility as an employee. And that meant, and she made it very clear, officially I was now drafted in with a clear job description and something to deliver. These are things we must begin to embrace, short of which extremely few businesses in this country have survived a generation of change.
Aga, we've seen many times, it's not a given that when a parent starts a business, that the children will pick interest in running that business or joining the business. In any case, we've seen many instances where, you know, kids just get used to a soft life sometimes, especially children of fairly successful people. And your parents are quite successful people in Uganda and within the region. So how did you overcome that, you know, to actually pick interest, and not just pick interest, but do what you do and carry on with the baton?
I think my colleague here mentioned it. You start out early. You have exposure to the business. You have a positive exposure to the business. I think sometimes the offspring or the next generation could have a negative exposure to the business. They could have an exposure to the business that is one where they feel either it denied them parenting, or they could feel that it is something that when mommy and daddy talk about the business, they're only talking about negative things and all the difficulty that they have. And as humans, we tend to have...
others will deploy you to punish you.
Yeah,
it happens among farmers.
Exactly. And it's also quite common for human beings to have a negative bias to something. You look out for the negative things. I think it's imperative that the running generation have pride in their own business. And they pass on and share the pride of this business. And it is something that is felt that this is not just a legacy, as she called it, but it is the family pride. It has got our name to it. And with that, there is an attraction to it, an interest to it. Sometimes I tell my colleagues, though, that entrepreneurship, though, is not for everybody. And unfortunately, this tends to be forgotten, that not out of 10 people will be entrepreneurs. We've got to accept that. So I think it is important that even the generation running the business are constantly working with the teams or with the next generation to figure out who of these people are entrepreneurs. Who's going to be a good entrepreneur, who's going to be a good manager, but somebody might just want to be a doctor, or they might want to be, you know, an advisor or a consultant or something.
And they could be very good at that.
And they could be very good at that. So I think one is to try and box, put what they would say, a round peg in a square hole, which might not fit. So there is an aspect of searching for the right fit of person and right fit of individual. With our family, we all get a chance to sort of try out in our own individual spaces and to try out at different endeavors before joining the main enterprise.
I hear you. Patricia, beyond, I know you tackled this a little on the fact that you began early, so that helped you to, you know, first of all, go in and understand what should be done as a business person. But beyond that, what has helped you to keep, you know, that fire on, keep interest, keep moving?
Interesting question. I think because, like I said, I started early, very early. It was your after-school assignment. It was an extension of housework at home. So it very quickly becomes a part of you. And then you're trained, you're made to understand that whatever you have, whatever you need is going to come from that business. The school fees is going to come from that business. The clothes you wear is going to come from that business. The food in your stomach is going to come from that business. So it's in your personal best interest to see that the business thrives. So you give your all. Like I told you, I was earning a salary. I started at 20,000, then I was earning 70,000, 130. You had a choice. You can take a small amount of money that you're given for pocket money, or you can work and earn that 20,000 plus your pocket money, and then you can roll with the big guys when you go back to school. And of course, you know the choice that I made. So growing older, you then realize that it's no longer about me, but this business has grown and it takes care of other people. So I mentioned that we have 87 members of staff. You then realize that the decisions you make are not just about your stomach, but they're about those 87 people and the people that depend on them. And that, I think, is what cautions me in the decision making. What really keeps me sober when I'm thinking of borrowing. You have to think, will the business survive this loan? And will the people who depend on this business continue to depend on it?
I hear you. Charles, we've had many business people really complaining and really having issues with their children not having interest in the kind of business or path or career they, chose. And of course, a few mistakes have been made. Like I mentioned earlier, we've seen, especially among farmers, it happens. You don't do something, you're punished by being deployed on the farm to do something. So how do we, again, complementing the input of our entrepreneurs, keep our children part of the business enterprise?
I want to speak direct to the viewers and tell them that whatever you are hearing here are the kind of wisdom, jewel that you want to make your family enterprise to succeed. What is coming out of here is early conversation with your child, telling the child that I got for you pocket money, it came from the business. I got for you shoes, it came from the business. We are sleeping in this house, we are having water, the business is paying. That appreciation will begin to ignite interest. And it is our responsibility to bring that out clearly. Many of us have tended to think that let my child go through school, finish that tertiary degree, go for a master's. When they come into the business, they come straight at the level of head of finance, head of marketing. Patricia started as a junior, earning a very low salary because that was the value of that position. But then there was something about when she was being introduced that was strikingly positive. And Aga also said, please make it a positive exposure. What was positive for Patricia was that, please, there's pocket money for everybody. But whoever is able to go and make a contribution at the business, that money is yours. The amount of effort you put in is rewarded by the business, not mommy. The business will reward you for what you've delivered. Now, as you do that, the person is beginning to say, so this is how money is got. If I put in more effort, the rewards get bigger and better. So that kind of introducing our people to the game in a structured way is very good. Many of us delay this game so much and then tell our people now that you have got a degree in marketing, you are head of marketing. He has never made a sale. And when he fails, you begin harassing him and calling him all types of names. And indeed, the poor fellow can't succeed overnight just because he has got papers. So you find that you are harassing a person you never tutored, you never nurtured. It is an effort, it's a process, and we must be ready to do that. But also you can now see what comes out of this conversation. As Patricia begins to grow in this thing, first of all, Aga Sekalala Jr. was saying, you start with where you have got natural fit. But as you grow, Patricia says, begin to get a bigger picture now. What is the purpose of this enterprise? It's not just about me enjoying something. I'm contributing to the sector where I'm playing. I'm contributing to make the welfare of so many people as employees, as suppliers. And once you have a purpose and you have appreciated it, the family enterprise begins to have identity.
Thank you,
And
Charles.
that's a big one.
Thank you very much. Viewers will take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about a number of issues, including work, social life balance, because sometimes we have, like Patricia, our sisters taking the mantle of leadership, and that comes with a number of responsibilities. We'll be knowing much about that. This is very important because in COVID-19, you need business leaders that are seasoned, prepared, and mentored and refined to actually weather the storm. After this very short commercial break. Hello, welcome back, viewers. We are looking at the practical solutions that can help you weather the storm, the COVID-19 storm. But in there, we are discussing critical virtues of doing business. And I'm Charles Boyd, your host. With me in the studio, I have Aga Sekala Jr. and Patricia from Nina Interiors and Charles from Enterprise Uganda. I want to start with you, Patricia, before we went for the break. We're talking about the issue of succession and moving from one generation to another. Yeah, there's something you wanted to comment on that subject.
Yes, what I wanted to say is that there are many family businesses where the founder feels that his children don't want to join the business. I would like us to know that, one, to get the child to want to join the business, they have to love the business. For you to force a child to join that business will be a travesty. It will be a disaster for the business and for the child. You might be denying the world, Uganda or the world, of our next Chief Justice. Someone wants to pursue law and is probably going to go very far in that career, and you're trying to hold him back in the business. In the business, he will not perform because it's not what he wants to do. So either have them in very early, or let them come in and join where they feel comfortable, rather than force them to be in. You can train other people to hold those positions than forcing a child who doesn't want to be in the business and is not qualified to be in the business. Your business will just collapse after you.
Good. Aga, what has been some of your tough spots in managing from the big man? And as you think about that, I'd like to throw in something like some kind of a spanner in the works. You have these people who have been working with Mzee for generations. Probably, like I was saying during the break, they used to drop you at school and that kind of thing, and then you now become the man, you're the one in charge. How do you handle such situations? Because I understand we have a number of entrepreneurs probably who are in that same spot.
Yeah, I think there will always be employees who might be quite senior to yourself in terms of experience, and these will be nearly across the board. They're all the time. All businesses have that aspect of leadership, and yet there are some people that have a senior in age, senior in experience. I think the most important thing is that these key, who you call key personnel or key historicals, have to be treated with some form of respect. I think that there is a tendency sometimes to get to push them out very quickly, and I think that tends not to work very well, because you need to understand that part of the process is you still need to have some aspect of celebrating and honoring the past of the business, and sometimes it is these people, those people that you described as people who've always been there. Sometimes it is sometimes it's traditions that you've had as a business, So I think that taking the mantle of leadership requires quite a bit of patience with, especially sometimes with individuals. And the difficulties, and I think where sometimes the challenges that most managers will have is once you start to put in strong performance measures, if you want to change, a business becomes competitive, you're trying to introduce stronger performance measures. Sometimes it tends to be that some of your older, more experienced personnel have lots of difficulty adjusting to strong performance drivers or strong performance demands. The natural thing is to, like you're thinking about succession in the business, is to make a long-term plan, and is to start dialogue with a view to what's next. How do we move on? How do we take this to the next level? And I think that it works if given its right time and allow for the dynamics and the right resources. I tend to find that a lot of these historicals also have the interest of the business at heart. So if it is them to step aside is the requirement, then it is acceptable if it is done in a respectful manner.
Good. Patricia, one of the issues I've picked from a couple of entrepreneurs in family businesses that is challenging to them is working with siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have some that you work with, and how are you managing that relationship?
Oh yes, I work with my elder sister and my cousin. We're both on the management team. And in sales, I have 2 cousins, and in production, I have a cousin, maybe there are 2. And different, almost at every level, there is a family member. This is not nepotism, it's a family business. But
well,
the
say
good
you have 80 employees.
87. Of the 87, some are family members. But the wonderful thing is that these family members who work in the business take the business as a job. There are no special favors. There are no special benefits of being a family member. You clock in the same time, you have appointment letters, you have expectations, you have targets, whether or not you have that thing in your DNA that makes you a family member. So that working with them is not a challenge because the family relationship is not brought into the business. Having said that, I would say that it's important to have a good relationship at family level before you enter the business. Because if you have differences and disagreements, that pettiness and bickering can seep into the business. And if you allow it to take hold or take root, then it can affect the business negatively. We come from, we have the same mother and same father, so we don't have that issue. But I know that where it's a polygamous situation and you have children in the business from different mothers, then there's a lot of clashing and suspicion and all sorts of intricacies. So all the tension and the fighting at family level comes into the business. I would recommend for anyone, for any parent, any founder of a family business who's trying to bring in the family, clean it up at home before you bring it to work.
I hear you. Charles, before you come in with key learning lessons here, how is what these two have talked about, especially relating to some of those tricky issues emerging or that they have to deal with in family businesses, important in building businesses that can withstand challenges like what we are contending with today, COVID, but even other crises?
You know, business is about 2 things. Number 1, the vision bearer. Then number 2 is what Jim Collins said, the 3 things you must address to succeed long term. You're a leader, it's a given, you're already there, but address these other 3 things. And he said the 3 things: 1 is people, 2 is people, and 3 is people. Now, what we've been hearing in here is leaders come, they start these enterprises. The enterprises grow way beyond them. They become legal entities by their own right. Now, if you do not plan for the next generation of leaders, you have trouble. Now, as you are planning for the next generation of leaders, you have another problem in an African setting. That business should be a source of employment for relatives. And they are not saying that business should create more opportunities that make more people to be employed. They are simply saying, you have a business, I have a relative employee. It should be the other way around. I have grown. I want competent pair of hands. If it's a relative, no problem, there's an interview to pass. You pass, you come in. Once you come in, you fall into what Patricia just said. Please, here is the rule book for your position. Here are the targets. Here is your boss. Never come and call me again, Sister Patricia. Never come and call me, this is my cousin. That is something outside Nina Interiors, outside Yuga Chick. So, if we do not have a deliberate policy as a country, and I want to make this directly for the leadership and the policymakers of Uganda, the family enterprise in this country is collapsing every year. We have never paused for a moment and said, what are those basic elements? And this Saturday afternoon has been so rich, so key. When I listen to Aga talking about how do you deal with a person who's living, don't make him look like, you know, you have expired, your memory is not worth talking about. Your brain can't even remember anything. You go, dignity, respect, give him another title, give him another responsibility. That doesn't demand a lot of fiscal energy. Do it with a lot of respect.
Good.
Very good.
Now, I want to move on to the aspect of, you know, you've moved on. You have families now. Yeah? And, you know, every family has aspirations. And sometimes you find these aspirations are diverging, yeah? You know, from those of the family. You have interests. Aga, if I may start with you, how have you been able to reconcile, you know, your individual family aspiration as Aga Junior Sekalala family, and then now the broader, you know, Sekalala family and the business entity that comes along with it as an appendage to that?
Okay. Well, I think in my case, the two are move in similar direction. I have my own private businesses and sometimes my own interests of my own. I have my own family, yes. I think one of the things is that we spend a considerable amount of time when we're developing additional interests, developing teams, building teams of people that will run these businesses. It is important to understand, are you going to be able to deliver are you going to be able to build something worthwhile? You need to invest in the people that are going to run it. So as to ensure that you're not needed to be there every single day, to be able to make sure that everything happens. So you need to be able to depend on building with the good people that you're working with. And that is the same even within the family businesses. You need to spend a considerable amount of time building strong teams, thinking about diversity within those teams, thinking about who's going to ensure that there is delivery of the right deliverables of your objectives, of your goals and your mission and vision ultimately.
I hear you. Patricia, it might actually be even tricky given our African setting. I mean, you get married and this gentleman is probably in forestry or into growing and he's telling you, no, furniture, that's not my thing. I mean, how do you create that balance? I mean, stay focused with that vision and at the same time manage these interests at that family?
Well, I got married a little later in life when I was already entrenched, I would say entrenched in the business.
Yes.
So my new life as a wife was not going to divorce me from my already existing role as a leader in business. I still had that obligation. Of course, when that happened, I relocated, and then I ended up living so far from the city. And you know, with the traffic jam, so it means you have to be up by 5 a.m. to be at work on time. So it was a little bit hard. And then when I did have, when I got pregnant with the twins, I had to take time off. First of all, I was put on bed rest officially. So the entire 9 months I was home. I was supposed to be online, managing the business online. But one of my pregnancy aversions was the computer. It would make me throw up. So that I was out of the business for that period. And then, you know, when you've just given birth, these are twins. There's not much, I couldn't rush back to work.
Yeah.
So I had to leave the business for a long period of time. Longer than I had ever imagined possible. The wonderful thing is that the business continued. It continued. I found it where it was, picked up and got up and running, but it continued. That because we had put in place systems, like you mentioned, we had put in place people who could continue to run the business without me. But it was good that I was able to take off that time to raise my little girls. Yes.
Good. And I think we'll touch a little on the aspect of work, social life balance, which I think comes in quite strong to you entrepreneurs, business people, because I think a number of them actually don't know when to have a break.
Yeah.
And that can affect productivity at that level as well. But Charles, what do you pick from these particular aspects?
I think one is that if you're a family business and you are the founder of the enterprise, recognize that the children you've given birth to are going to become individuals and mature as such in their own right. And when they do, their interests are going to be peculiar to them. Permit that to happen. And Patricia pointed out the aspect of saying, yes, somebody was connected with the legal profession, and he really feels this is where I connect and I really want to swim with it. Do not try to disrupt that. You could still tell the person who has got that extra kind of desire or aspiration to say, but you could attend our board meetings. And he will tell you, yes, I can. Because some of these judges, some of these ministers are board members in other places. So you now get something where they can still be of value to that enterprise, but recognize that they have a life to lead on their own. And that really is a very good one. But they have also brought something key, and their own experiences were united. They said, if you are going to be involved in your other extra engagements as a child who is also involved in your original family enterprise, one skill you are not going to run away from and you must continue to hone forever is the skill of building human resources. It's hard enough to get that skill to just run one enterprise. Much more for children that were put into our enterprises and have these aspirations to have their own businesses. So please, let's make sure that they acquire that skill. It's a difficult one, because I have listened to bankers say there are two things that have disturbed the industry, and they have continued to disturb the industry non-stop. Banking is well resourced. Banking has a lot of systems. Banking is well regulated. But they say there are two things they have had a headache with. Number one is fraud. Number two is HR. Now that tells you why you need to make sure that in the family enterprise, as you bring in the young people to come in, one of the life skills you must just make them to appreciate is you are going to meet all manner of people. Master it. And then as you do that, systems. And learning to live with systems. It's a headache. When you think this is my thing, why should you tell me to sign papers here? This is my thing, why are you telling me that before we can give school fees to uncle, there are vouchers to be signed? Systems in a family enterprise are areas where people have abused the business and ended up eating up the enterprise. As I said earlier on, family enterprise is founded by the owner and is going to be killed.
Very good.
By the owner.
Viewers, we're talking about business or business enterprises in Uganda, especially in this era that we are living in. Of course, we are contending with a number of realities, one of them being the COVID-19 pandemic. But then, of course, even before COVID happened, I think there were a couple of challenges and realities, tough realities that a number of business entities were contending with. And we're trying to look at the vacues that you need, to build a business that would stand the test of time. And in this particular respect, we're talking about family businesses. But moving on, I want to touch the aspect of the environment where we sit today. Going back, to the aspect of import substitution. The president spoke quite passionately about this. And I think the new realities have propelled us into that direction, because what this pandemic has done is that it has disrupted the value chain. So it means that countries and economies now have to retreat to depend on what is locally sourced and manufactured. I want to start with you, Patricia. In the sector where you sit and from where you sit, do you think we are at that level in the furniture business, among others, where we can actually source for some of these items locally? And if not, what do you think can be done to actually build that capacity? Of course, taking yours as an experience, because even people making these furniture pieces are actually running businesses like yours. Yes.
Thank you, Charles. Government has pushed this import substitution agenda in the furniture industry. And they did it with the best of intentions to grow our economy. But it was not well thought out, and it was poorly executed. There are two ways of doing anything. There's the carrot and the stick. Government's way of doing it was the stick. So anyone in the industry was faced punitive taxes. If you're importing furniture over a space of like about, I think it was 2 years or 3 years, the taxes almost doubled. The intended effect from someone sitting behind a desk was that the players will have to now start manufacturing locally. But the market still demands the quality that is imported. Why? Because the local players have not achieved the capacity to produce to that level. The better way to do it would have been to apply the carrot, which is to start with incentives. That look here, local players, we want you to start producing locally. And we already are. We want you to produce locally. What is holding you back? Then we'll tell them we need equipment, we need machinery, we need dependable power, we need skills. Work on that, and then we move forward. But instead what they did was punitive taxes. And so it caught the industry almost not ready. The only people who were ready, who were able to benefit from it were the foreign players. So we've been dialoguing, and yes, there are some incentives that have come our way. A little, it's very little, and it's late. And again, it's the foreign players going to benefit. Why? Because there is some tax exemption, but it's tied to volumes which only the foreign players can meet. And what I wonder is, these policymakers, government, are they able to track these foreign players to see where their money ends up? Does it remain here in Uganda? Are they able to follow it to see that it's not repatriated? Why not focus on us, the locals? Focus on us and grow us. Having said that, because of course we were given the stick, we had to act.
I hear you. Maybe before you go on the other point, in terms of incentives, what kind of incentives would you want, to see, especially for your sector?
Well, for an entity that has not been in manufacturing, to ask them to manufacture starting today, they need equipment. That equipment is expensive. We went into it, and at the level that we wanted to break in, one machine was going to cost 280 million shillings. Just one machine. And it's just one in a cycle of
a workshop,
of production. One part of production needs this, then the next, then the next. Not everyone can afford that machine. But if we had that one machine, we would not have to import. at all if we had that one machine. But to wake up and tell an enterprise that now start manufacturing, yes, let's buy the machinery. Then what about the operators? In sourcing this machinery, we discovered that the machinery has an issue. It gets spoiled very quickly because of the dust that is produced. And you have to fly in a repairman from Germany. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And the other reason, the other thing that spoils the machine is the operator. Where can we get an operator in Uganda? There's no operator of that machine in Uganda. I got one from Kenya. That's an expatriate. Yes, he's from the East African community, but he's an expatriate.
Yes.
So you see how our wage bill, how our
operation costs
are going higher and higher. But if you look at the foreign players, he has a partner in China who's willing to give him that machinery and the operator. So you go there and they're set up while we're here struggling rudimentarily.
I hear you.
Yes, but like I said,
yes,
we went ahead. We went ahead, and one of the benefits of this lockdown has been that because we cannot readily run to import, we have started relying more on our own production. Yeah. And I know it shouldn't come from me, but I'm pretty impressed with what we've produced. Okay. The volume and the time frames with which we can produce it. I'm pretty impressed, and I think that with time, as we continue, our imports will reduce greatly.
So tough times have, you know, pushed you into that space, and you're running with it. What
I tell people is that whatever you're doing, you will always find a closed door. But when a door closes, there is a window open. And as an entrepreneur, one, you should learn to anticipate the closed door. I don't know who would have been able to anticipate this pandemic, but also have your eyes open for the opportunities that come in a closed door, which is the window somewhere open.
Talking about people who anticipated this, I don't know whether it's by chance or something. I was looking at one of our biggest farms that makes sanitizer in Uganda. I think the Madivani, Thraya. I think that was a good call about 5 years ago. But I don't know whether it was, but I mean, because no one could actually anticipate a crisis of this magnitude. Maybe it was an investment call made at the right time. Aga, I'll move to you. Your sector is actually being relied upon, you know, to drive the import substitution strategy as well. Because as you know, much as Uganda has been labeled the food basket for the region, we import quite significantly, you know, agro-related products and inputs as well. How is your experience like? Do you see that readiness to really seize this opportunity? And if there are gaps, where are they?
I think that like you said, and we were talking about this earlier, is that there's been an opportunity where I think the consumer, policymakers, everybody in society in general appreciate that there is a need, and it is not just a strategic need, it is almost a security need. It is a fundamental need to ensure that we have sufficient local food production. And all the auxiliary, because it's not just food. You need to have, you know, need to have all you know, your foods, your vegetables, your fruits, all the things that you need to make a complete meal. And I think that that's definitely been a good thing. That everyone realizes that, oh, we have actually gone for 3 months, and in the 3 months, the local producers have been able to make sure that we've got milk, we've got sugar, we've got meat, we've got all the basics are there. Yes, once in a while you get to a shop and they might have a delivery might not be there, but in general, you know that with, you know, 1 or 2 effort, you will be able to get the items. I think on the front of food, we've been able to deliver to the market, and we've been able to deliver even to the regional market. But clearly, an effect will be that we've had to scale back. We've had to scale back production because we've had to scale back because there is lower demand. And then it will take a bit of time for this demand to come back in full. And so we will continue to try and fit in, because with some of these products, there's just no sufficient storage for them.
Yeah.
You can't store a bunch of matoke. You can't store a bunch of bananas. You have, there's a certain things that have to be consumed as they are produced, or vegetables for that matter. So
I was impressed sometimes, sorry to cut you short, when I had, you know, that we're importing some of the fish from China, and I was looking at the numbers, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Uganda is served by, almost every part of Uganda has a water body beyond Lake Victoria. Maybe it is something that now comes back to the table to really give good thinking on how we can stop some of those, or probably focus on building capacity home in some of these areas.
it's true. We have, the region has, there has been considerable amount of imports of cheaply produced tilapia from Vietnam and from China. This has been happening.
Interesting.
In spite of having a lake and in spite of having all these water bodies, it's been happening.
And good fishermen.
And good fishermen. One of the things we've got to understand, that there is a cause and there is an effect.
Yeah.
In the past, and I am secondarily involved in the fish industry because we make fish feed, and we've been looking at the tilapia production. But one of the things that has happened in the past, a lot of our fish was being exported. Mostly the Nile perch, a little bit of tilapia, so we had large amounts of export, in such a way that we didn't have much left, because all of the good product was going out to, was going out to Europe.
Yes.
To Spain and Portugal. Then these markets suffered a shock. They suffered their own shock from the financial crisis. They in 2008, 2009, they suffered so all of a sudden, those markets, they didn't have as many tourists, and so there was a decline. And so you see, our fish export numbers sort of came down, and we had slowly been recovering with those numbers over the last couple of years. It's been a slow, but it's been tough. It's been slow and steady coming out of them, and we're probably going to, we're going to see another decline from this particular pandemic. We, in that process, for local consumption, there was a need for still a fish product, but that was very, very cheap. And so some unscrupulous importers figured out a means to sort of bring in very cheap fish from Vietnam. Yeah.
I find it quite interesting, Charles, and I think it, in a way, relates to part of the discussion we had last time. I mean, you have fish imported, but can compete with the local fish. Yeah, and because, I mean, fish is fish. You get it out of the lake and sell it on the market, or if you grow it. I mean, I think we have favorable. Aga here is an expert in that area, but I believe we have favorable conditions to rear or grow fish. Again, it goes back to the issue of import substitution.
Correct.
Yeah? Where does that place us when you hear the experiences of these entrepreneurs?
And I'm just hoping that as we do these Sunday evening discussions, we attract the country to begin to appreciate that entrepreneurs are trying their best.
Yeah.
But as they are trying their best, we need to hear them out. When you listen to the story of Nina Interiors, you find an institution which says, we can go the route of import substitution, but it's a value chain. That value chain requires me to get the right machinery, the right professionals, the right maintenance and servicing of that whatever. Those are all elements you don't just announce. So you go for the executive pronouncement, but the foot soldiers, the policy follow-up team should begin to get to the details and sweat it out. We should be spending sleepless nights talking to the people and telling them that this thing has been announced. What is it we need to do? What does it mean to build technical people? We have a lot of young people who are having degrees in engineering. And we just needed to say that German who has been coming here to do this kind of maintenance should not be just coming to maintain one set of machines, should be coming to educate and nurture the young people. And then you tell the Nina Interior, concentrate on production. concentrate. Let us deal with these bottlenecks. Now, if you tell Nina Interiors that, you know what, you are the one also to create the expertise and the skills, you are the one to make sure that the machine is maintained, we're also saying, please, we don't want to see you just continue to import, and we're going to penalize you using high taxes. We've taken a shortcut, and that shortcut does not sit in for a long term. Anything that does not fit into the circumstances will remain rocking the boat until it settles, which means at some point somebody will get away with cutting out that kind of a policy position. Mm-hmm. It's hard work. But also listening to Ugachik, and they are saying, you know what, we went to production of feeds, and we need fish. Yeah. Ugachik will tell you, the fish I'm going to, the feeds I'm going to make must compete in the market, and they must have the fish. Now, if they are not going to compete in the market,
sorry to cut you short, Charles, a bit. Dear viewers, you can be part of this discussion. It is for you. Actually, these entrepreneurs and the business coach are here to actually answer some of those critical questions you could be having. So you can give us your question or comment. I have a call on the line. Please give us your name, question, or suggestion. Hello?
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 Yeah, you're talking to Mawanda Derek.
Yes,
and
Derek.
I'm listening from Nankulavie.
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ochichi and Mr. Agassi Kalala. I've really liked your conversation. I've been on from the start. But my worry about a business is I started up a company, like sort of a company, small one, called Cherry Fresh Fruits. But I find issues when I employ young men. They overtake me when I teach them where I get my product, how I get the market. We find like I get a market in Nakawa, they take it. Someone overthrows you out of the business after learning what you're doing. So I found that challenge, it is really giving me headache. How can I overgo about that one? And how best can I make my company? Because it's in apples, selling apples. But when I get new markets, you find someone you taught has overthrown you out of the business.
Thank you, Derek.
So when I want to expand it, someone overtakes you. So that's my worry.
Thank you.
I would like how to go over about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Yes, I think, but maybe let's take them and then we can answer all of them.
Correct.
Yes, and I have another call on the line. Your name and question.
Maybe let's take them and then we can answer all of them. Correct. Yes, I have another call on the line.
Can you reduce the volume of your set, please? Hello? Sorry, I think we've lost that one. Yes, I have another one. Please give us your name and question.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Florence in Luzira. I'm happy about that program. In fact, I've just bumped into it, but I'm glad. I'll just encourage that such programs like be aired weekly.
Thank you,
to
Florence.
Encourage us, the entrepreneurs. I mean, to good work.
Thank you. Yep, Florence is just appreciating us. I have another caller. Yes, your question and name, please. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please. Your name and question.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you for the program. I appreciate these days your program, and we happy about them.
Thank you.
What you are discussing is very interesting. It's like every Ugandan business person is experiencing the same. We have the same problems, and we have the same complaints. Our government seems to support foreigners more than the local people, because the incentives the foreigners are getting are so immense that for us we are getting nothing, and our business collapse. They come in, they take over, we collapse, and we are out. Then something which I would like to request in your next program, if you intend to have the same another program, Mr. Chichi.
Yes.
Can he please talk about finance literacy? Okay. We have a problem in Uganda. last Sunday you discussed the guy from Kasita was talking about how people are managing their finances. We have a problem. People make money, then instead of keeping that money or saving for a rainy day, they invest and invest and invest. And then when the problem comes, like now COVID-19, then people don't have finances to lay back on. So if we can be, there would be a discussion of how people can learn how to manage their finances. Save is one of the things. We don't save in Uganda. We don't have that culture. But if someone can talk about saving, the culture of saving, that will help Ugandans to learn and know, yeah, one day I needed my savings to do something.
Thank you very much, Florence. Thank you very much. Yes. Your caller, your name and question, please. Hello? Hello? Well, I think we seem to have lost that one. I think I'll start with you, Aga, quickly. But again, I have another. My producer is telling me, looks like we... Yes.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is Mel Brooks.
Yes, please. Go right ahead with your question and...
Yeah, now
sorry, I think we have a problem with that line. We can't hear him quite well. Yes.
You had a question from Derek, and he seemed to be having issues with young men he was employing. I think that young men can be and my fellow panelists will agree with me. Young men can be ambitious. I think he needs to employ. He needs to consider employing some young ladies
as well. Okay.
I think that's what I would do if I were him. I think he needs to balance a bit. He will find that the ladies will be interested in growing his enterprise.
Yeah, they're more focused.
Can I contribute
please.
to that? I like the angle that Aga has taken. It is true that men are ambitious while women are looking for security.
Yeah.
So she will just be working to ensure that she has an income and her family is taken care of. While the men are more ambitious, they want to go start business on their own and all that. But having said that, you can't stop that from happening. Uganda has been described as the one country that has so many businesses starting up, and that's how they do start up.
Yeah.
Someone comes to work with you, he picks up ideas from you and then takes off and starts on his own. But COVID-19 has taught us, and moving on is one lesson that we should carry forward, that business is not just about buying and selling. It's about relationships. People buy from people they know. People buy from people they trust. They buy from people they feel they can depend on, that this is a product I can depend on, this is a service I can depend on. Yes, there's the unscrupulous person who always wants to see how they can get it cheaper, and therefore they'll try to go behind to see how they can get it cheaper from your own worker. But if as a business you can put forward yourself as an enterprise as a trustworthy, dependable enterprise, ultimately the business will continue coming back to you. We go to his business, he said he's supplying apples, right?
Yep.
So if he's supplying apples to someone in Nakawa, what relationship has he built with this guy in Nakawa? So that this guy in Nakawa will continue to want to buy from him, not from someone else.
I want so-and-so's apples.
Yes.
Charles, Florence talked about the issue of investors and the color and that kind of thing. Or maybe if there's something you want to say about the Apple gentleman as we go into that.
Yeah, very quickly on the young man who was saying, these employees of mine have no ethics, they kind of pick up and move on. There's what I call entry levels for different businesses. A business of just buying a hen from me and selling the other side, the entry level is just go and buy chicken today and go and move on. But that's what you call entry. To remain there is another story. It comes to what Patricia said. Businesses that endure, that make a mark, have got one, repeat business. 2, customers who now begin to refer you to others. 3, customers who will begin to buy more beyond what you have been buying. If you begin to see the 3, this new entrant will get in there. He won't be there long. But you as a business person, you watch and see what he has done and then tell the other employees, did you see what our friend did? And he thought he could do it without my knowledge. I came to know about it. We have just released him to go and continue with apples. Please, let's build this enterprise. Now, by you doing that and rewarding the loyal ones and getting them to build their own careers and making them begin to say, you know what, not only was I coming here for salary, I was coming here to be mentored to build a career. You have enriched that job. Now, that relationship is what Patricia is saying. We are building something deeper in terms of owner-employee, but also something deeper in terms of employee, the owner and the consumer. Now, those 2 are hard work. Anybody just jumping in just because I saw where the apples were sold, try it. Try it. Not as easy. But probably let me also touch what you just said about our people are complaining about attention to the foreign direct investors as opposed to the locals who have paid every price to start from basics. If you see people who are in these arcades here, and Ugandans may be able to remember that somewhere around January or December last year, one of the arcades owners was having all the arcades being put up for sale. That pains because that arcade person began somewhere and made a mark until the banks could trust him with billions of money. We needed to be supporting him and assisting him on how to handle success, how to handle diversification. If we just assume that, oh no, this man has always been successful, business has got no history of what you used to be. Business has only 2 things you must serve and serve constantly. Meet customer expectations and be ready to compete. Do these 2, it's a done game. So this FDI and DDI thing here, I would really want the government agencies like Export Promotion, like UIA, Enterprise Uganda, URI, to begin to talk about not just the entry level of businesses. We concentrate so much on entry and abandon. If you looked at these stories here, these are stories of generations of decades.
Very good.
Of building and building.
I hear you.
And we need to go there.
Very good. The others were comments and compliments for the show. So I'm going to take another round of calls, dear viewers. So please give us your name and question. Please keep it quite precise and brief. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, please. Your name and question, please.
Yeah, this is Mrs. Prudence Okunika, the proprietor of K. Roma.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes, please. Your question.
Producers of organic wines and juices. I appreciate so much for this program. To be sure, I have not moved even a step. I'm starting with you because I don't even see you taking a glass of water. I've always enjoyed Mr. Chichi's advices.
Not move the step.
During this COVID, our business has gone so much that sales like have gone halfway. We are allowed to work, but of course it is not as usual. Now, here I'm worried about URA because before they were giving us a lot of problems. I know Mr. Chichi will do something about that. I will make sure that I meet him personally and explain more. Now about workers, I appreciate Patricia, even this head of the other school, the advices. But there are some workers, since COVID is down, they have been sitting in their own houses. They have never even given a call to ask, how is business? But there are those who walk 20 kilometers every day to come and see if there is something they can do. Now, if we are to size the staff, can I consider those who are just seated comfortable at home and leave out these who are loyal? And at the factory, I see production has been the same even without those people. Will I have made a mistake if I cut off those people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take another caller. Hello. Your name and question, please.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please. Your name and question.
I'm Lydia.
Can you reduce the volume on your TV?
I'm Lydia. I just wanted to appreciate you. I just wanted to appreciate you for that.
Okay, we'll have another caller. She's appreciating us.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes. Your name and question, please.
This is Geoffrey.
Yes, Geoffrey.
Geoffrey, I'm calling from Chibuye.
Yeah.
My question it rotates around the financing of SMEs. Indeed, I don't know how UDB is going to help these SMEs, where I belong, because it seems that the UDB has been financing those who are well off, who have taken off in that line of business. And once the small business goes there to ask for a loan, you see that the requirements that these people demand they cannot meet them. So you find that even in this period of Corona, now the small businesses are collapsing. Hope you can hear me. So I don't know whether they revive them. We shall revive our businesses, but at least we need something like a miracle, our business to shoot up again.
Thank you, Derek.
That's
Thank you.
all what we are going to talk about. Business cannot. In fact, even in private sector, it must come to the ground this time.
Okay.
We have been seeing them on TV, the deliberating of how to revive businesses, but we actually need people on the ground, more so on domestic investors like we do.
Okay.
This business of bringing these people from China, sorry to mention them, India, but this is the time we local business people to take the mantle and take on our country in a business perspective.
Thank you very much, Derek. Yeah, quite some interesting views. Maybe I'll take one more caller and then we'll wrap it up. Yes, can you give us your name and question, please? Yes, please.
Okay. Hello?
You're live on NTV?
Yes, thank you. Yes, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you, sir?
Richard Anguyo is my name.
Yes, Richard.
Yes, I'm getting you clear. I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Please give us your name and question.
Richard Anguyo. My question is, some of us, we started, rental construction, but we have dried on the way, no roofing. How do we partner? Where do we get to money for such projects?
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. I think we are looking at real life experiences that entrepreneurs are going through, are contending with at the moment. Now, I want to come to you. Let me start with you, Charles, on the issue that was raised. That entrepreneur who talked about his employees that are home.
Correct.
Who have not bothered to check to see what's happening. Anyway, what do you make of that scenario, and what would be the best way forward?
Each time you go and employ an individual, you employ that individual because they are going to add value to what you are doing so that you serve a customer. In tough times like this is the time, as they say, when your brightest stars shine clearly. This is the time when you see who is the kind of employee who has appreciated the situation, who is the one who says, I have a contract. This is not the time to talk about having just a job contract. This is not just a time talking about labor laws. This is about saying, how do we get a customer to come through the door and bring us money? I must say this. It is an interesting scenario I've never seen in this country. You stand on the Lozera side, you stand on the Ginger Road side, Kawempe, Masaka Road. Ugandans are walking in large numbers. Never before has it happened. That is the spirit you need to reward. Don't reward a person who is simply saying, I have a contract, I don't need to call you. The boss is losing sleep. The boss is a normal human being. But in this particular time now, the ultimate boss is the customer. Please, let's unite as a family, the owner, the employees, the suppliers, let's serve that person. So it is the time to remove anybody who doesn't fit the attitude and the mindset for surviving the lean times.
Very good. Patricia, what did you pick from the viewers? Because you know these questions were apportioned. And I would like to be democratic and give you a chance to choose which one to respond to.
Yes. In line with that lady of the juices, Roma, she mentioned a worker who is walking 20 kilometers. But she also mentioned that production is continuing as normal with a lower number. Which means that what COVID-19 has done is it has showed her that she was overstaffing.
Him, yes.
So, so she can reduce her staff and still produce the same quantity. And when demand grows, then she can take on more staff.
That's right.
This is a good opportunity for her. And if the 20-kilometer walker and the stay-at-home guy are doing the same job, I would stick with that one. Mr. Ochichi mentioned that people are walking, they're on the street walking. Yes, because there was no transport. And you were given an opportunity that if you want to work, walk.
Yeah.
Those who wanted to work walked. They were either on a bicycle, or they were walking, or they were sitting at the back of a pickup to walk to work. Those are the people who want to work. Those who stayed at home, they have an alternative. And as a business leader, if you're employing someone who has an alternative, they won't give you 100%.
I hear you.
You need to employ someone who's hungry, someone who has passion. That's the person who will give you 100%.
So when we say that's not business as usual, it doesn't only apply to the entrepreneur, but even the workers.
Absolutely.
Aga, what do you pick from the callers, you know?
I think the similar comment, the one where the workers have made an effort, they are coming into work, they're putting in 100%, 110%. The employer needs to stick and reward those with a job and continue to work with those ones. The ones who have not shown much interest, truly speaking, probably don't deserve the job. I think it is a test where the one who's decided to be non-responsive has failed. I think that's how I would treat it. I think that in general, my view is that everybody has a problem of some sort. Everybody has an effect. The pandemic has had an effect on everybody. The person in construction is short of capital. They're not able to deliver on their
and
next
someone
project.
is stuck midway.
So they are stuck they are stuck in the middle. I think that's the questions that Charles was asking about earlier. There are going to be new people that will be able to bridge the gap of this construction person, of this developer. Really, he's a developer. That's what he is. Are there small financial instruments that will enable him to bridge over to reach that final point? Or was this person already borrowed and already leveraged anyway? So there are many questions. Because we're only listening to one part of the conversation. We've not been able to build a full. We don't have a full picture, but we've heard what they're expressing as their views, and I think that it's a challenge for policymakers to try and understand, because every single one of these sectors are building blocks to the economy. They are very important building blocks to the economy. We hope that as a media house, as you've done a job where you've at least brought out some of these, and they can all be summed up and be listened to.
Very good. Charles, sorry.
I would like to respond to the gentleman who talked about financing. And
UDB.
UDB financing. And he said, those guys are not considering us the small. From the side of a lender, you only want to lend to someone who you're sure will pay back. And he said that what what they're asking for is too much. Yes, they're asking for that because that's the only way they can be sure that you're going to pay back. But back to this person who wants to go for financing, why are you rushing to borrow? The newspapers are full of stories of businesses that are collapsing because they borrowed. Is the need that urgent? And borrowing is not just to fill in a cash flow gap. Borrowing, if you're borrowing, you have to have a demand for your product, and you have to have the market that will sustain that business to be able to pay back. So if you don't have that, don't rush to borrow. Look at strong businesses. They started small and they continued growing by reinvesting their profits. If you cannot grow from reinvesting your profits, borrowing money, you might also not be able to grow, because what you're paying back to finance, what you're paying back for that money is what you would have been reinvesting in the business. So think very, very hard about borrowing. It will go back to someone else who talked about the topics that they would like Enterprise Uganda to address. They want them to address the issue of financial literacy. People need to understand borrowing. This is not borrowing 2 spoons of sugar. This is borrowing money which can destroy what you already had. So, Mr. Ochichi, when you're doing those courses, it's not this simple thing at a lower level. Let people understand what the cost of borrowing is and what they should borrow for and whether they should really borrow.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our interface today. So, Aga, what are your parting shots?
I think entrepreneurs should constantly accept some aspect of diversity. Diversity within the groups of people that they work with, within their employees, within their teams. Diversity is the difference. It's that will make you a winning team. You need to have different ideas and different things that you can go with. For those of us in family enterprises, honor your past, understand your past, what value does it bring to the table, but be bold, set a new agenda, think about the new conditions, constantly evaluate, and try and see how you can forge forward.
Very good.
I think that those would be my parting words.
Thank you. Patricia?
COVID-19 is a new era. Going past, now we're in the recovery period, and going forward, business will never be the same. It might actually be better, but it will never be the same. Customers have changed, their demands have changed, and the way they demand has changed. For a business to remain thriving, you have to remain relevant to your market. Then again, looking at the family aspect of it, family comes first. So be first a family before you are a family business. And when you do get into a family business, it should not be a by force thing. And then also as a family business, let's give family businesses the seriousness they deserve. This is not a kaduka. Most family businesses start as a kaduka, but the entrants have the power to grow them to be big things. Like Aga, he's grown Ugachik to be a regional player.
Good, good. Charles, your parting shot, and within that, I think you can wrap the gentleman who talked about URA. His staff is not working. He's very worried about the taxman.
And on the URA, I can only say that the very message that should have been adopted by government when talking about import substitution is the same message that URA should be having now. And I was so delighted recently to hear from the new boss of URA saying they are going to have a dedicated education program and interaction with the taxpayer. And I think that's the way to go. If that comes through, they are going to discover what needs to be done to make people more compliant. And my parting shots are this, that one, there is no way I can narrate the story of Enterprise Uganda better than the testimonies of this nature. Nina Interiors has been part of Enterprise Uganda for a long time, so has Ugachik been. But now, these are people who have walked the message of mentorship and growth. Their testimonies settled so many debates that we would never be able to settle without hearing from the fellows who are practicing. And as I conclude, I want to say this, that entrepreneurship, when it is done well, has got the power to redefine, redirect, reform, and even redeem not just individuals, families, communities, sovereign nations, but the entire human race. And for such a powerful tool called entrepreneurship to deliver, nations should go beyond lip service and begin to do the hard job. And it has come out from here. Talk to the entrepreneur. They have issues, talk to them.
Thank you very much, Charles. Dear viewers, we've come to the end of this interface. I'm sure it's been a refreshing and quite educative and informative debate. With me in the studio, once again, I've had Aga Sekalala Jr. from Ugachik, Patricia from Nina Interiors, and Charles from Enterprise Uganda. I've been your host, Charles Pwoji. Thank you for being part of the show. We're having a series of these debates still continuing, and we'll be engaging with you again next Sunday, same time. We'll be glad and are looking forward for that engagement. Have a good evening. Yes.